Making scenery is a lot of fun, but if you want to do something you haven't done previously, it's easy to doubt yourself and overthink everything. So, in this video I want to show you how I continue making the scenery on my small tabletop layout to hopefully inspire you to have the confidence to make your own scenery. In the previous video I focused on preparing the layout to get started with scenery, and I did a lot of static grass. There are many videos about different static grass techniques, but here's a quick overview of how I did it. I started with 2mm grass for the lawn of the houses that's being lived in, and 4mm grass for behind the houses. For the mountain and the area around the abandoned building I did a lot of layering to get the desired length and variation. The first layer consisted of some 6mm green grass applied in patches, and then 2mm dry grass to fill in the rest of the area. This created a nice fade from the bright green around the houses to drier natural grass around the abandoned building and the mountain. I also made a hiking trail. For the second layer I applied some more 6mm grass randomly in different areas and in different colors. Static grass on its own is a bit too perfect, so I applied a lot of my homemade leaf material. I then used some chalk pastel powders on the hiking trail, and I glued in the barbed wire fencing, which is very South African. That's what I did in the previous video, and in this video I do some more static grass. I make a bunch of these tiny trees. I have no idea what they are called, but here's my reference that I used. This is on top of the Magaliesberg mountain in South Africa. At the time of filming it's at the end of autumn, so the grass is already quite dry. However, I'm going for about the end of summer look for this layout. And in this video I also make some interesting static grass tufts, and I show you how I bring it all together for a realistic result on the layout. So let's get started. Some of you commented and said that the hiking trail shouldn't be this light grey, instead it should be brown, more like the surrounding ground texture, and I agree. This was an easy fix. I used some different chalk pastels to create a darker grey/brown color. Applying it with a soft paintbrush is very easy, and it's easy to get good results. Just start light and build it up in layers to the strength you want. It's easy to add too much and not really possible to remove. I felt like the grass was still a bit too short and too green, especially around the abandoned building where I wanted quite tall dry grass. I didn't apply another layer of dry grass in the previous video because I ran out of 6mm dry grass, but for this video I decided to go buy some more. I've seen some people use spray glue to layer the static grass, but when you want to apply it on a layout like this, I guess you would have to mask things like the fencing and road to avoid spraying glue on it. So I decided to stick to my method of using wood glue. It works perfectly fine, just make sure the glue has a clear finish. Try to avoid applying the glue in clumps like this. The secret is to constantly have just enough glue on the brush, but not too much. Just be patient and refill your brush often with small amounts of glue. And remember, nature is full of randomness, don't be a perfectionist with this. My static grass applicator has this as the ground wire. Some of them have it as the positive and the negative on the inside. I've heard it can give better results, but I'm not sure. It's also not needed to clip it to a pin or something on the layout. Just hold it close to the area you are applying and it will work about the same, if not better. After applying the grass, I again use the vacuum cleaner with a piece of fine cloth over the end, so I'm able to reuse the static grass. I wasn't happy with the amount of static grass that I applied, so I put the grass back in the applicator and went over it again. And I just repeated the process for the areas that I felt needed some more dry grass. Alright, next up the small trees. For this you will need some thin copper wire. This is an old doorbell and the wire in it is perfect for making trees. Almost any thin wire will work fine for this. I take about a 1 meter long piece of wire and double it up about 4 times, so I have 8 strands of wire. I then cut in the middle, so I have 2 bundles of wire, each with 8 strands. Then I start twisting in the middle, that's because I'm creating 2 small trees at the same time. Then cut the loops at the end. With it twisted nice and tight in the center, I cut in the middle of the twisted area. Now you just have to twist the branches. Once done, I cut the branches to length and it should look something like this. I made a bunch of them using this wire and using 8 to 12 strands per tree. But to have some more variation, I made some more using thinner wire and using more strands to have more branches. The more wires you have, the more branches you will be able to create, but it's also gonna take much longer to twist all of the branches. Next, I take them outside and using some Tamiya primer, I give all of them a quick base coat of primer. This is optional, but it will help the paint and glue stick much better for the next steps. It's also much quicker to spray paint them instead of using a paintbrush. But I'm not super worried about painting them perfectly at this stage. I don't want to waste any spray paint, I basically try to use the bare minimum amount of paint. For the next step you will need some fine grey powder or dirt. This I have here is from drilling many holes in a concrete floor. A nice way to hide the twisted wire look is to basically paint them using glue and then dip them in the dirt. It will also give them some texture. For this I just use normal wood glue and add a bit of brown paint. I then paint the branches and dip them in the dirt. And shake off the excess. This is how it looks. And now I just repeat the process for the rest of them. This actually goes faster than you might think, because I don't have to paint all of the fine branches, they are already grey from spray painting them earlier. After letting the glue dry for about 3 hours, I decided to paint the branches using some brown. I don't fully paint all of the branches, I leave some of the grey areas, basically heavily dry brushing them. But you can paint them however you want, it just depends on what type of tree thingy you want to recreate. For adding foliage or leaves, I started with 6mm static grass and I used a bowl to make it easier to apply. I then applied wood glue on all of the branches that I wanted to add leaves on. I then sprinkled on the static grass like so, and I repeated the process for the rest, making sure not to apply leaves on all of the branches, leaving some of them as dead branches without leaves. If you want, you can also add some dry grass for dead leaves. I tested a few different materials before I got something I was happy with, so here's what I ended up doing. I applied 2 layers of 6mm static grass, making sure to let the glue dry before moving on to the next layers. Next I applied Hornby's scatter material dark green, and this is how it looked. I recommend making a few of them using some different materials and seeing how it looks. Expecting to get the perfect result from the beginning is a bit unrealistic. These are the ones I used for testing, and these are the ones I will use on the layout. If you are finding the video helpful, please boop the like button. I put a lot of effort into making these videos and I really appreciate any support. I had some of these coconut fibers lying around, so I decided to try to make some type of cane plant. I don't know what to call it, English is my second language, okay? Anyway, I cut about 1 centimeter and dip it in the wood glue and simply press it into the static grass like this. They are maybe a bit tall, but you can always cut them shorter if you want. I then installed the rest of the small trees on the mountain. In my references, they don't seem to grow evenly spread out, but seem to grow in groups, and smaller ones on the edges of the groups. I also installed a few dead ones that I didn't add any leaves on. Alright, let's make some static grass tufts. To be honest, I don't think it's needed to do this on a steel baking tray like you see everyone doing. It could give a small improvement, but I haven't noticed a difference. I just tape a piece of baking paper to my cutting mat. Don't you just love it when a roll of tape does this? I'm sure all of us know how to make static grass tufts, so I'm not gonna bore you with it. But here's something a bit more interesting. So I wanted the grass tufts to stand out a bit more between the rest of the grass, but my tallest grass is 6 mm, which isn't tall enough to stand out between the rest of the grass. So I decided to try to layer the grass. It gives an interesting result. I actually like the more messy look compared to just longer static grass, but it depends what you are going for. You can do this with any color of static grass. I'm using autumn fields and dry grass. I left about a third of the grass tufts as a single layer and a third as 2 layers and the other third as 3 layers. Using 6 mm grass for all of the layers. And then finally, for some of the tufts that's 3 layers, I apply some of my homemade dry leaf material to try to simulate some seeds or something. Doing this is quite easy and straightforward. However, it's a bit time consuming because you have to wait for the glue to dry before doing another layer. I glue in the grass tufts to random areas between the grass I already applied, and I also glue them in areas next to the barbed wire fencing. And I also glue them in next to the abandoned building, which made it look so much better. Grass tufts work great for areas where it's hard to reach with the static grass applicator. If they stand out a bit too much and look weird, try blending them in with some ground texture or dry leaves or something. In a future video I will make a few slightly bigger trees which I will place along the rock face behind the houses. In all of my references there weren't any large trees on top of the mountain. They grow more out of the wind on the side of the mountain. Please let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions or feedback for future videos. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.